I'm Megan Roy. I am chairing this commission. And I just want to start by making a couple of comments. Thank you all for being here and for committing to this work. I think there is no more important work that we could be doing right now. At the same time, the magnitude of this work is at best overwhelming. I'm convinced it's the right work. But I also know that in order to do this work well, we will have to spend a lot of time together. We will have to spend a lot of time engaging other voices who aren't at this table. As I look around and virtually, I know many of you, and many of you know each other for longer than I've been around, which means we've been in the field for a long time, and that is really exciting. And it also means that we will need to stretch, to think about this work differently, to be creative and pull ourselves outside of kind of the way we've always done our work. So in a second, I will give us a chance to introduce ourselves as we do roll call. But before I do that, are there any amendments to the agenda that any commission member would like to suggest? Right. So what I am hoping folks could do, and I'll start with the commission members in the room, and then we'll call on commission members on the screen, is just to start by introducing yourself, your name, obviously the entity or organization that you're here to represent. And if you could, a hope you have for this work and this commission. I'll go last, so I'll turn it over to you. Go first. Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Zoe Saunders. I'm the Interim Secretary of Education representing the Agency of Education. And my hope for this week is that we can really work in coordination to come up with a unifying vision and agreement on that.
Morning, my name is Mike Licklider. I'm representing the Vermont Superintendents Association. My hope is that we can think differently about what we're doing and find some ways of commonality and some ways forward in a different direction, in a direction that all of us think is good for Vermont public schools.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Francis. I'm currently the Executive Director for the Vermont Superintendents Association. Leaving that position on August 2nd. I've been asked by the Vermont Principals Association to represent them in this work. I'm happy to be here. My hope is that we can meet the immense challenge that's outlined in the charge to this group, and that we can do it in the spirit of goodwill and true commitment to change, because in my experience and belief, change is warranted.
Morning, everybody. My name is John Castle. I'm the Executive Director for the Vermont Rural Education Collaborative. The collaborative is comprised of 8 supervisory unions and supervisory districts in the Northeast Kingdom and beyond a little bit. And my hope for this work is that we will instill a very strong public trust with regard to public education.
Good morning, my name is Jeff Fannin, I'm the Executive Director of Vermont NEA. I'm excited about this work. I think it's important, and the charge in the statute is significant. And my hope is that we can accomplish those goals with the best interest of students in mind.
Hi, I'm Nicole Mace. I'm representing the Vermont School Board Association. I'm a school board member in Winooski, Vermont. And my hope for this work is that we emerge with a vision for a strong and vibrant public education system, while not losing sight of the constitutional mandate that exists and is unique to Vermont, and should be sort of the bedrock of all the decisions we make moving forward.
Peter Conlon from the Vermont House. For me, it is all about creating that vision, because ultimately, if we can agree on a vision, the very hard decisions that go along with that and I are going to have to make in the legislature will at least be with a common goal in mind.
Morning, I'm Ann Cummings. I represent the Vermont Senate. I chair the Finance Committee, so I'm a money person. I set the tax rate according to to the internet right now. I hope we can come out with not just the vision, but a plan as to how we can provide the quality education that our students need and deserve at a price that our citizens can afford to pay.
Morning, everybody. I'm Craig Bolio. I'm the tax commissioner, also a money person. So my hope is really that we can get some solutions on the education funding and finance side that will help stretch forward the very difficult road ahead.
Jennifer, I'll start with you because I see your face first on the screen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Deck Samuelson. I'm the chair of the Vermont State Board of Education. And as I think about this, to Megan's point, these are really tricky and extensive issues that we've been tasked with addressing. I feel like all of us in our respective roles are probably focused on different parts of the elephant, and I'm really looking forward to bringing us all together so that we can, really look at the elephant as a whole and really try to work this out. So this is really hard but exciting work, and I'm just really looking forward to working with all of you. Thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer. Oliver?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, I was having technical difficulties and I'm also battling COVID at the moment, so apologies in advance. So Oliver Olson, I've been appointed to by the Vermont Independent Schools Association. I think, in much of what we've already heard from other people, we certainly share those goals. I certainly share those goals. And I would just say, we need to obviously keep our students at the forefront of everything that we're doing here with our work, and we should be looking for ways to enhance opportunities for students while also leveraging the efficiencies within the system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Did I miss anyone? Is there a commission member on the screen that I did not catch? Oh, thank you. Elizabeth?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I was having a little difficulty with my computer also. I am Elizabeth Jennings. I am the Director of Finance and Operations for Addison Northwest School District. I am the Vice President for VASBO, which is the Vermont Association of School Business Officials. And my hope, at least individually, is that I can represent from the VASBO standpoint all the different sorts of situations that school districts in Vermont are currently under, basically because everyone kind of comes from a slightly different standpoint. And so being able to represent what all of those different positions are. And at the same time, as you said, there's a lot of people on the call and a lot of people on the commission, and trying to collaborate from different positions and different ways of thinking about education and its funding. And I'm just hoping that we can collectively come up with like the best plan for everybody in this situation.
Thank you. I think that is everyone now. I will just introduce myself. My name is Megan Roy. My role on the committee is as the past chair of the Census-Based Funding Advisory Group, also known as the Act 173 Advisory Group. And I have been asked to chair this commission. My background is recently as a superintendent. I am now the coordinator of school leadership programs for St. Michael's College. But most of my career was spent in special education. And so what I would say in terms of my hope for this work is I've spent most of my career, like many folks here have, on making sure that public education works for every single student that comes through. And I think developing this vision and how we make that sustainable, as I said when I started, I don't think there is more important work than that. So I also would just say, having chaired a committee like this that is representative of lots of different perspectives, my hope is to help organize our work. And when I am asked to represent our work, I will do my best to represent the work of this commission as a collective, and try to be really clear when we are in agreement. I will express that as an agreement, and when we are not, I will express that and express the different positions that exist, or at least do my best to do that. I am Also, I know I will stumble like anyone else would, so I would appreciate if folks correct me or reach out. But I'm cautiously excited about this work. I'm very excited about the work. I am cognizant of the fact that it is an enormous body of work. So just logistically, I also want to say we have a few members of the public in this room, but many more on the screen. We do have a period for public comment at the end of today's meeting. As you'll see in a few minutes, when we review the charge of the commission, engagement is a core charge. And engagement is not going to happen in just 10 minutes of this meeting. So we may have members of the public who want to speak. We'll do our best to give folks time. But I'll say this again at the end, but just understand that this won't be the only opportunity for that. And with that, I actually, if I could have Secretary Saunders share her screen. So the next part of the agenda is to introduce the steering group members. So this commission also operates with a steering committee. And I want to make sure that we can introduce that. Thank you. And thank you to Secretary Saunders and agency staff who put together some slides that'll help guide our review of what we're here to do. This is the list of all of us. And then, so the steering committee is a 6-member committee. 2 members appointed by the governor, 2 members appointed by the Senate, and 2 members appointed by the House. And I don't know if folks want to reintroduce themselves, but these are the members of the steering committee. I will also be a part of those meetings for purposes of organizing the work. The charge of the steering group is to provide leadership, to help understand what support this commission may need in terms of possible consultant or consultants. We'll talk about that in a minute. A prime purpose of the steering committee, and will be its first body of work, is to develop and propose a work plan for the full commission. So one of the things that will need to happen after this meeting is to very quickly organize a meeting and then a meeting structure for the steering group, because that group needs to do some work to propose a work plan before the next full commission meeting. The steering group will also form a subcommittee specifically to address education finance topics. This subcommittee may include non-commission members and may form additional subcommittees. I would offer that the body of work we're about to do is big enough that we will not be able to operate without subcommittees, I believe, of the commission. So we'll talk about that. Any members of the committee that either want to share something or add to this or not? Yeah, John.
My question is, will we have input as the commission to the work plan? Will that be essentially just provided through the steering committee? And the second question is, will we also have an opportunity to provide any recommendations to the subcommittee on education finance?
The answer to that question is both. First of all, the work plan that the steering committee will propose goes back to this full commission for adoption. So yes, the work plan.
Adoption, but no initial input to that work.
Well, I think I'm speaking, I don't want to speak for the steering committee, but I would imagine they would welcome that input both before and in the conversation when we discuss it. And the steering committee also will, their job is not to do the work. They're a subcommittee of the commission. So their job is to get into some of the detail of the work. And so, yes, I believe they will want. I also don't want to speak for the steering committee that has not yet as a group. Other questions or comments? Yeah.
So I would offer, as the steering committee has not met yet, I see that the key charge is creating a feedback loop to make sure that we do have that coordination. And as the commission is really helping to set the direction, the steering committee will be evaluating really how to think through operationalizing that, but we'll need to be intentional about creating that cadence.
Thank you. All right, so it is time to review the duties of this commission, and as I shared in the beginning, and those of you who either were part of creating the language of the bill, but also reading it as you start this work, it is significant. I will start, and then feel free to jump in if I miss any context. I will try to also pay attention if folks have questions. Feel free to pause. We, as a commission, need to meet at least 14 times. And at least one meeting of the commission or a meeting of the subcommittee shall be held in each county. So one of the things to know that is that there will always be, as there needs to be with open meeting law, there will always be a physical location. And that physical location will need to rotate across the state. I would offer virtual meetings are always an option. These meetings will all be hybrid. This is really difficult work, and I think to the greatest extent possible, being here in person, I think makes that work easier to do. I also understand that we are going to be from the very bottom of the state to the very top, and so that might be difficult. But that is important to note. So you will receive some organizational emails from Suzanne and Maureen from the agency to start that process of scheduling. Ideally, I think it will be helpful and simple to pick a regular meeting time, and the location is what will vary, and it will, agency folks will need a little bit of time to figure out where in each county we meet. Members shall receive compensation and reimbursement for not more than 30 meetings, including subcommittee meetings. As you came in, and also attached to your calendar invite, there is a per diem reimbursement form. Suzanne and Maureen will be the primary collectors and facilitators of that process. So you can email that to them, or you can fill it out here in hard copy. You can also send it to me and I will pass it to them. So our job, we must submit final recommendations on or before October 1st, 2025, and receive public feedback. A 30-day public comment period. One of the things that we need to do as a commission is to develop a public outreach plan. Holding each of these meetings in each county is not public outreach. It's part of it, and it will allow people to sit in on these if they would like to. But it is not how we will be fully engaging. So that's something that the commission will need to plan. And then that feedback would be included as an addendum to the final report, which is due on December 1st, 2025. We also, before I move on to this slide, we also are required to give some preliminary recommendations to the General Assembly starting this December 2024. So there's a pretty accelerated timeline. So the next several slides are the policy considerations that this commission is responsible for. I'm going to try not to just read the slide, but for clarity, especially for folks tuning in, I think it is helpful. These slides, actually, this is a question. Past committees have a section on the Agency of Ed website. Will the commission have a section? Perfect. So these documents will be found there. So members of the public can read through this and at their own time. So obviously a primary consideration of the commission is the education finance system and to make recommendations towards a sustainable funding system and a funding system that provides equal access to education in alignment with our state policy beliefs. So this will include allowable uses for the education fund, including the impact of healthcare costs. It will include recommendations on setting tax rates and strengthening the connection between budget votes and property tax. It will talk about any adjustments to property tax credit thresholds. This committee will consider alternative funding models. Specifically, it will consider many, but the legislation specifically asks the commission to look at alternative funding models, including a base amount of per pupil education spending. Adjustments to the excess spending threshold and spending caps, ongoing monitoring system of the education fund, including and in connection with the Education Fund Advisory Committee, and additional considerations regarding finance. I'm going to go through all of it and then I'll pause so commission members can ask questions. We can always go back. Education governance, resources and administration. So the commission is asked to look at the structure and needs of the Agency of Education and to make recommendations also around the composition, role, and function of the state board. To think about the roles, functions, and decisions of local control versus state control, and thinking about the integration of career and technical education. The physical size and footprint of our education system. We talk a lot about this as the delivery model in Vermont. Building upon state aid to school construction working group. It's important to know that there's lots of work happening around education right now. So part of the goal of this commission is to hold all of those things at once as we do our work. But what is the most efficient and effective number and location of school buildings, districts, and supervisory unions? Thinking about workforce retention and capacity, looking at class size data to make those decisions. We are asked to look at town tuition programs, the role designation and tuitioning outside of Vermont, and the use of private therapeutic schools. And the role of public schools in the provision of education and the social emotional well-being of students. So how we should be delivering public ed. We are going to make recommendations around wraparound supports and collaboration, strengths and opportunities of collaboration with post-secondary schools, consequences of recommendations on staffing, funding, and any other affected system, and additional considerations if there is anything that we think was not named in that legislation. So I'm going to pause for questions or comments or moving on. And I think those on the screen, I think I'll be able to see you raise your hand, and if not, someone else will. Okay. I would just offer that just reading the laundry list of things this commission is responsible for feels really, really overwhelming and also just ethereal almost. I do think the fact that this commission works with a steering group will help that. So the steering committee's job is to really organize how will we accomplish each one of those things? Who are the right people on this commission to be sitting in a subcommittee? Again, my sense. And I think that today is really just here's who we are and here's what we're charged to do. We will feel a little bit more productive and organized, I think, after the steering committee has a chance to take a look at this. Specifically in the legislature, yeah. Oh, thank you. Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Megan. I just want to raise a question that we probably should deal with early on. There are a few members of the public who've put comments or questions in the chat. So I think there's just we probably just talk about the mechanics of how we use the online chat and how we respond to public comment in there.
Thanks, Oliver. I appreciate that. Partially because I have not really been looking at the chat. So what I would say, particularly for this meeting, is I am not monitoring the chat live. When we get to the public comment portion, if folks have a public comment that they would like to make, we can do that mechanically. I believe, Suzanne, we have access to the chat though afterwards. Is it saved with the meeting? Mm-hmm. So if there are questions, I actually now can see that most recent question about chat comments included in public comment. The answer to that question can be yes. So we will be able to do that, but give us a chance to actually read the questions in the chat since we're not doing it live. And we'll be clear about how we will handle that, especially for future meetings, since all of the meetings will be hybrid. Thanks, Oliver, for that. Okay, thank you. Okay, you can go on to that. Perfect. So the legislation specifically calls out some key stakeholders that this commission will need to decide need to consult with. And so mechanically, we will have to figure out how we will do that. Those are listed here. And it includes state agencies, higher education representatives, the Office of Racial Equity, representatives with expertise in community schools, the Vermont Youth Council, Commission on Public School Employee Health Benefits, and an organization committee to ensuring equal representation and educational equity. So again, part of the job of the steering group is going to be to unpack each of those stakeholders and figure out the best way to engage with them.
Excuse me, Megan?
Yes, go ahead, Jen.
It's Jennifer. I don't know if you are looking at the slide deck, but mine still shows the steering group and subcommittee, so I don't know if there are additional slides that aren't up on my screen.
Interesting, because
I think it might be on your end. I can see.
All right.
Yep.
All right, never mind.
no, that's okay. Thanks, Jennifer. We can share the slides afterwards and make sure they're posted.
Great,
Thank you for that. Yep. Okay. And we, as I shared, my role on here is from a existing law and policy. So part of our job is to review these are named, and obviously other things that the commission decides are important. Act 46, the consolidation law, Act 173 about special education funding, but really about intervention services and best practices, Act 127, and Act 76. So we will, as I'm thinking about this, these are linked in the slides that you'll receive as commission members. It is fair to say you should probably take a read through those in advance of our next meeting. We'll be a little bit more concrete about what we need, what you'll need to do in advance, but I can say that will be a good first start. This is, I'm assuming this is here just as another policy. Yeah. You know, part of what we will have to wrestle with is Vermont's commitment to funding and equal access to education for all Vermont public ed students. And so that incorporates Act 60, which created the Education Fund. It established a uniform tax rate, created a revenue stream, and Act 68, which created the homestead property tax. I would invite any member of the commission who is who spends more time thinking about the funding side of things to share anything they want to add to this. This is context for us. This is the funding system we currently exist in, and it's important context for us.
I would just add that the reason we had Act 60 and 68 is because of the Brigham decision, which found that Vermont's constitution, it's not a sort of state policy decision. It's one of the only services explicitly listed in our state's constitution. And the Brigham court found that it required, because of the Common Benefits Clause, as a service that requires equal access to educational resources. 60 and 68 were the policy tools used to achieve that. And so those are, I think the tools are up for debate and consideration, but what's not is the underlying principle of equal access to education.
Great, thank you. Okay. Act 46. Any commission member want to take a stab at this one? Act 40, go ahead, Ann. Perfect.
Shared education, we did this. That was our first attempt to get schools on a footing that was financially viable. It was work at the Department of Education. even then we knew our school population, student population, had been shrinking for well over a decade. I think we're now up to 20 years, and that has not reversed itself. It's continued. It's had debatable success. And I think with a lot of these, there's been tweaks, there's been things that have gone in and out of the education fund, just other bills. So you've got 60, you've got 68, you've got 46, but things have been added like, teachers' health care and pensions. There's been a lot of work done on pensions that have gone. The latest one was universal meals. And so you've got the base bill, but there's things that have been added, probably added, not subtracted. We also changed the funding source for the ed fund, went from the original mandatory general fund transfer with an inflator to the entirety of the sales tax, and they were relatively equal amounts of money. That was before the Wayfair decision, so which gave us taxing internet sales. So the ed fund has benefited from that. And especially during COVID, when all the federal stimulus was there and people had nothing more to do than buy things online. So there's been changes in the funding that have impacted and are impacting, I think, this year too.
Gotcha.
The one thing I'll add to Act 46, when it was passed, and you were there too, and it was also about educational opportunities. So much of it was thought was we need to consolidate governance to allow the smaller, more rural schools typically to have access to educational opportunities that the larger districts had already. And I don't know that, to your point, Senator Cummings, I don't know that we've ever taken a look at success of that or consolidation. This is actually the first time I've seen sort of in such a succinct way all the consolidations that have taken place. It's good. It's helpful.
And we'll leave it to the chair of education because finance hasn't looked at that.
It's not a criticism. It's just sort of,
Yeah.
we
No, I
you
think
talk about additive and
we've asked how many schools have merged. Not many. We've had unmergers too, so. But that isn't static. It's changing.
Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah, just a technical comment. Senator Cummings, some people in the audience are having a hard time hearing you, and I think the same may be for others in the room. So if you can just, for those of you in the room, if you can make sure the microphone is in front of you, that would probably help.
Thank you. It's up here. So I would just, this is a good time to say, it's our first meeting. One of the things that we want to figure out as we is,
there you go.
Thank you. It's just simply the mechanics. So thanks for your patience. Okay. So thank you for that. So the other. Act 173, I do feel comfortable taking the lead on this one. Act 173 of 2018, as we shared earlier, is Vermont's most recent revision to the special education funding structure that moved us from a reimbursement model to a census-based model and focused very specifically on implementation of intervention systems. And I think what I would say is the reason that law looked at both funding and delivery is because it is really difficult to make movement in funding unless you work on your delivery system. And I think that idea is really relevant for the work of this commission. It is at the end about being more effective. Act 173 is specifically targeting students in need of support And those of us in the field would agree that it is about doing that better so that we have better outcomes for students. And yes, funding that in a more sustainable way. Act 173 had a longer implementation tail than it was originally intended. It was delayed a few times. The pandemic happened in between. But it resulted in changes to the special education rules, independent school rules, and then obviously the census-based funding rules. Okay. Act 127. This is more recent legislation that this year saw the implementation of. Act 127 looked at and changed pupil weights in Vermont, how we weighted pupils. So weighting pupils is an acknowledgement that students with different demographics cost different amounts of money to serve effectively. Act 127 built off some research done into our pupil weights, determined that they did need updating. And the implementation of it this year, it was rocky at best, and really is why we are here today. It adjusted and added pupil rates. It limited homestead property rate increases. And then that was suspended later. Suspended the excess spending threshold, hold harmless provision, and ballot language requirements. It tasked the agency with the development of a universal income declaration form and amended education quality standards. Act 76 focused on childcare and early education. It created the pre-K implementation committee that is one of the stakeholder groups that we will want to engage with as a commission. Act 76 changed the child care finance assistance program, licensing regulations, and charged building bright futures with implementation monitoring. It also tasked the agency with providing recommendations on pre-K costs. There's a report on that linked here, and allows the continuation of student loan repayment assistance. That is Act 76. Okay. So the resources available to this commission, much appreciation to Suzanne and Maureen for technical assistance. They will continue to support us throughout the process. You will receive emails from them regarding scheduling and calendar invites and locations and things like that. They will manage, as I said, the reimbursement. Legal assistance would also be provided through the agency as needed, and the agency will be the vehicle for consultants or facilitators once this commission has determined what sort of support we need. Anything to add to that piece of it?
We'll speak a little bit later in the agenda around some of the expertise that we think may be needed by the consultant. So we want to have a beginning conversation around that to guide the working group's approach. Additionally, the Agency of Education will be available to provide support, and we have been ramping up our work in this area in terms of doing more comprehensive data analysis. And I think those reports will be quite helpful to the work of this commission, and also working very closely with Commissioner Bolio and looking at the financial data as well and the tax data, and thinking through how we can provide some early information as we go into this cycle.
Thank you. Can go on to the next slide. So we'll try to I'm just going to really quickly review this. We're a little bit behind in the agenda, which is fine. And I'm not surprised for the first meeting. I do want to make sure that we have public comment when we said that we were going to. So again, our deliverables, we needed to meet on or before today. So we have met that. So that's exciting. A formal written work plan and communication plan by September 15th. So that kind of gives you a sense of how quickly the steering group will need to come together to be able to draft and propose that, and then turn that back around to the full commission. Preliminary findings, again, December of this year. And that is so that the 2025 legislative session has something that they can work with. A final report with recommendations is December 1st, 2025. And shortly after that, proposed legislative language to achieve a vision for Vermont's public education system. Again, December 2025. This committee ceases to exist at the end of the calendar year 2025. Okay, so the next item on the agenda we can be somewhat quick with, and that is because one of the things this commission has access to, there is an appropriation attached to this work. We can access and work with consultants or a consultant. Secretary Saunders will share, let's have just a brief conversation about potential skill sets or areas of expertise. I would also just say the steering committee's work plan and how it addresses the work is going to be an important conversation to have before deciding what support we need. There are maybe pieces of our charged work that we have sufficient expertise on this commission. And until we are sort of organized and on a path, we won't really know that. So today's conversation is not meant to be, it is meant to be really preliminary. And an early look at the conversation, and then I would love to hear from members of the commission, is just some potential expertise that we may need as a commission. Obviously, education finance acumen, that is a primary responsibility of this commission. Data collection, analysis, and modeling. A knowledge of the relationship between state funding and federal program compliance. Ability to evaluate the risk and reward of changes to the system relative to student outcomes. And some specific expertise potentially on public outreach, facilitation, and communication. That is just offered as a brainstorm. And I would love to take a few minutes to hear from members of the commission on other potential areas of expertise that the commission may need to be thinking about.
Honestly, I was thinking in my head what we would want, and I would find that I think this list is actually better than what I came up with. The public outreach, facilitation, communication may not flow perfectly with the very data information specific skills we want above it. We may need to reach out for additional help if that's the case.
I'd just like to add a caveat on the ed finance piece, and forgive me, I'm going to keep beating this point, I think, but we can only really learn from other states that have an equity provision in their constitution. There are many states that have adequacy provisions in their constitution. That is not necessarily translatable to the Vermont context. And I just want to be really clear that if we're looking for someone with expertise in other states, that we're narrowing the field to folks that have expertise in a context that meets our constitution.
Thank you. Jeff and then Oliver.
Sure, this is for those online. This is Jeff Francis. To the extent that you can identify a consultant who's got a strong understanding of the education delivery system in Vermont as it exists today, I think would be particularly helpful. It's hard, I believe, to translate Vermont's unique education delivery system in a number of different aspects to folks who come from an absence of that familiarity.
Thank you. Oliver.
Yeah, I would echo Jeff's comments, although I would throw in a little bit of a caution as well. I do think it's important that somebody has an understanding of our system, but that comes with some risk, though, because part of what I think our charge is to look at how we could do things differently. So so that's just something to think about. But I think one thing we might want to consider adding to this list is an understanding of education governance systems as well as finance, because the two are closely related.
Thank you. Mike.
If you're also looking to add areas that may not be identified, I think it's important to add the fact that we want to look at highly successful systems. We want to make sure that our public education is providing what's needed for our students from an educational perspective. So I think that's an important area to add.
Thank you.
We also talked a little bit about the process of choosing the consultant. I mean, will there be an RFP process? Will there be direct solicitation? Will there be an opportunity again for the rest of the commission to review the background of those individuals or those organizations that are that work? I do think most of the individuals that would have the capacity and the expertise in this have a body of work. And I think it's important for the commission to be able to review some of that work to see if there's certain biases in their work.
I'll let you respond to the sort of RFP process, the agency, and then I'll talk a little bit about the steering group's responsibility towards that end.
So my thought process as we go through this work, we would develop, we would create the scope of work. I think the steering committee would ensure to get feedback from the commission on that to ensure that it's really representative of the direction that has been set forth. And then we would follow the normal agency procurement policies to do a request for a proposal and do the competitive bid. Would be my understanding of how we move forward.
What I would add to that is the steering committee is charged with determining what consultation is needed, and therefore probably officially it's the steering group's responsibility. But again, determining what the feedback loop and how to get input and frankly how to do that quickly is going to be important, especially if we are bound by the kind of the typical procurement process. That mechanically by itself takes time. And so we're holding all of those things at once.
I don't know if you can see me. I had, this is Jennifer. One thing I would add to that list is when we are looking at other states, I think it would be really helpful to focus also on states that are sort of similarly rural, because I think a lot of the economies of scale that more metropolitan areas experience aren't going to work for Vermont. So we need to be very creative to think about how we can achieve something that's more cost effective given the reality of where we live.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I might add something additional that I think is really aligned to this conversation, which is the consultant being able to create an equity index. I think that's really a lot of what we're talking about that's very unique to the state of Vermont and our focus on making sure that there's really equitable access to educational opportunities. So we might think about that as part of the component of work.
Thank you. Yep, Jeff.
I want to add to, I think what Mike, where I thought you were going, Mike, but on to it and keep it simple, but the ability to evaluate risk reward changes the education system relative to student needs and outcomes. Because what we're finding is, my members are saying is, students are coming demanding and need more than they ever have before. And so the school system is being asked to do more than it ever was before. And so I think that's got to be in the mix as well. It's a lot of words. But.
Nope, thank you.
I just wanted to circle back on the equity index because I do think that that's helpful. And my understanding is the agency is attempting to do that with the quality standards monitoring. And so I would not want to recreate stuff, right? Like I think investing time and effort into that and making sure, because it's a tool that I think as a school board member, I've gone to the website and tried to sort of unpack some of that. So I would really support the agency's efforts to have that data be meaningful and applicable to this work. And this could be a good way to do that.
Thank you. Yep.
And just to refer back to Jeff and the comment you made, I think all these areas work together. Needs are growing at a time when funds are becoming more restricted. So I think we need to look at efficiency, effectiveness, and excellence, and that's going to be a challenge.
Okay. What I'd like to do, thank you for that, is I'd like to close that part of the conversation. I'm going to give us the full 10 minutes that the agenda had for public comment and acknowledge that that is insufficient, and meaning this meeting is an organization of this commission so that we can define our work, understand who each other is, and start to think about engagement more deeply. And I just want to acknowledge, and then call on you, Jeff, is I can see some of the comments about who's speaking and things like that. So it's just, again, reiterating a blanket. Part of what we will do as we look at location and function of the meeting moving forward is we will tighten up a hybrid meeting. We realize we will have a lot of people attending virtually. Hopefully we'll also have some people attending in person, and we'll do the best that we can. So just kind of acknowledging that. Jeff Francis.
Okay, thanks, Jeff Francis. Quick question and then a statement. Should we anticipate that the steering committee will meet before we have our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so noting that, I'd like to ask the steering committee if it would pay particular attention to the deliverable that was on the screen that says a written report containing its preliminary findings and recommendations, including short-term cost containment considerations for the 25 legislative session. And the reason I'd like them to consider that is because folks know we had a horrendous year this year. And if the General Assembly starts to look at short-term cost containment after being advised by the steering committee and this commission on December 15th, 24, it could set up another problematic set of circumstances for school districts because they'll be completing their FY26 budgeting processes. And if the policy considerations are going to affect short-term cost containment, then it's a collision course. I would ask the steering committee that it give due consideration to the scope and magnitude of the overall charge in the context of what the effects are going to be on school districts for their FY26 budgeting processes. If there's an intent on the part of this commission and the state to want to affect the FY26 budgeting processes, A, it may be implied in the charge, but it's not directly stated. B, it's worth disclosing if that is an intention in any form or fashion. And C, any guidance or signaling around what FY26 is going to look like ought to be happening within the next 6 weeks.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of context to public comment. I see at least one hand on the screen. And if we have, so first, just public comment in general. Those making public comment, we welcome it and understand that the commission, especially given that this is the very first time we have sat down, is likely not prepared to respond to your public comment. And so we may, if we can, we certainly would, especially if it's a very concrete question. But more likely than not, we will not be able to respond today. We will be able to take that input into consideration for future meeting plannings. If it makes sense, we may be able to provide a follow-up answer. We may not. And so with that, I see on the screen, I'll start with Mary Gannon. At least that's the name on the screen. And I'm going to start with about 2 minutes. It could be, yeah, we have more hands popping up. So we'll start with 2 minutes. Mary.
Hi, thanks, Nicole. Can folks hear me okay?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Okay, great. Yes, hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing for some public comment this morning. My name is Mary Gannon. I've been working in the state of Vermont for almost 30 years doing educational equity, anti-racism, equity-centered work across the state. I'm going to start with my comment and then I have a question. On page 1, section 1, where under B, where it talks about the membership of the commission shall be composed of the following members, and to the extent possible, the members shall represent the state's geographic, gender, racial, and ethnic diversity. I'm just going to be frank with you all, and those of you who know me know that I typically am. I'm not sure, as I know many of you, and I look across the membership of the commission that is gathered today, if that particular part of the edict for membership is actually aligned or not. So I'm concerned that many times in the state, when we gather folks for commissions of this sort in a range of different sectors of government, we talk about equity, we talk about using an equity-centered lens, and yet the demographic of the people who are charged with the work and who are making significant decisions, particularly in this case, when we know that we're in a real difficult moment with our public education system, that we're not seeing representation from the communities and the schools and the children's families who are most impacted. So that's my comment. I will continue to attend these meetings, and I hope to see a shift in the demographic of the people who are part of the decision-making around such an important issue. And I'm happy to hear, more on that. My question is, I just want to better understand the difference between the commission and the steering committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. I see Dan MacArthur.
Yes, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for this meeting and for accepting public comments. I appreciate it. Dan MacArthur is my name. I'm the chair of a local school board, and I speak as a representative from a small rural school district, which still has a single town school with a single town school board. Our school serves in many ways as the locus and focus of the town, and I hope the commission will recognize the value of these small schools to the community and to the kids in them. I know that there's a move afoot in Vermont to lower property taxes and to cut education funding as one way to accomplish that. I also know there's a lot of pressure on this commission to right-size school districts, as if doing so would bring down the costs. But I hope that you on the commission and the members of the steering committee will closely investigate what has been mandated in the past to do a comparison of the cost and educational outcome between small unmerged schools and larger merged districts. What does the data show? Has merging schools saved money or produced better educational outcomes? Until these questions are unambiguously answered, it's not time to be considering further consolidation or merging. I also offer to work on any steering committees. You kind of know where I'm coming from. If you feel my voice would be valuable, I offer my time for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Other members of the public? I see Rachel.
Hi there, thank you. My name is Rachel Van Vliet. I am a resident in Barrytown, a special educator at Barrytown School, and I am the president of the Barry Educators Association. I'm speaking just as an individual today, and I want to thank this group for coming together because speaking as a Barry educator, we are the one district in Vermont that has not passed an FY25 budget. We face the challenges that other schools are facing. We have a divided community. It's been rife with disinformation and misinformation about our schools and education funding. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the public is going to be involved in this and that feedback loop, and how information is going to be presented to our community and our state about the benefits of public education. And I appreciate those who had mentioned that our needs are higher than ever right now. And even if enrollment's declining, again, our needs are greater than ever, dealing with effects of the pandemic, mental health challenges, school buildings. So I just want to thank this group for coming together. And we're looking forward to seeing your work and paying attention from Barry, Vermont. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rachel. There are two more hands, and I think that is about actually three. So that is what we will be limited to, is three more. And again, that is just for today. So I'm going to start with Polly Allen, and then Claire Wool and Matt Wormser. So Polly, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Polly Allen, and I'm a parent of two children in the Vermont public school system in Craftsbury, Vermont. And I also wrote this, but In policy considerations, fully consider and evaluate opportunities related to furthering collaboration with framing communities and towns. You have a line item for furthering collaboration with post-secondary institutions, which is wonderful, but I think I'd be really important to also have a specific line item for furthering collaboration with Vermont's communities. They're a wellspring of opportunity from small town to large. And I can say as a parent, coach, substitute teacher, and community member in our school, some of the most meaningful, positive, impactful opportunities for my children and the students of Craftsbury have come from the close integration of the school and the community and the expertise and activism and all sorts of amazing things. So I think as we think about developing a system and sort of local control versus state control, I would encourage everyone to not forget that these communities are really the wellspring for positive growth, and how can we find ways to really articulate that, further it, strengthen it, because it will bring great things for our students, teachers, and communities. Thanks for all your work.
Thank you, Polly. Claire?
Yes, Claire Wool, Chair of the Burlington School District School Board. I want to acknowledge and appreciate the leadership and preparation of today's meeting and access, acknowledging the Vermont School Boards Association in sharing out this information to school board members. We are actively engaged in participating and working together with you all, and greatly appreciate the slide deck today and the preparation, and just share my willingness to support in all aspects of this commission, because what is at stake here is incredibly concerning, and we are at a critical juncture. So the timing of this meeting in July and knowing the deadline that we have is incredibly important to all of us. So thank you for the seriousness of this work, and just an appreciation of being able to access it and listen in.
Thank you, Claire. And we will finish out with Matt Wormser.
Hi, everyone. I'll say hi, Megan, from the old days on the CVU school board. Nice to see you again. So, the reason we're all here obviously is because we're, have been seeing such an escalation in costs statewide these days, and our outcomes, at least as measured by a lot of the tests, have been, fairly average these days. And so I think the main hope that I would have for the commission would be to really focus on what other states are doing to address these challenges. A lot of the challenges that we've referenced, COVID, student mental health, are all very real and very acute, and by no means acute or unique to Vermont. And so, both from a service delivery standpoint, how are other states solving some of these issues? And then, as importantly, as we look for efficiency opportunities, I think everyone has a very strong interest in keeping service delivery as local as possible in terms of, keeping small schools available as possible, even though we know there's a differential cost profile there. But looking really at the role of the state, we have a relatively low involvement from the state agency in terms of coordinating service delivery, and we have a lot of very small schools. So what is the appropriate role of, a possible expansion of the Agency on Education to play a more active role in things like curriculum development, transportation, food delivery, really district, a lot of things that are traditionally handled at the superintendent level. Are there ways to drive efficiencies and drive down costs through some sort of statewide consolidation, or at worst, countywide consolidation around there? Obviously, we've had somewhat of a mixed bag in terms of seeing the efficiencies from the last effort around consolidation, but that I think a lot of the private sector world would look at consolidation as a means of efficiency. And as long as we're doing it at a level that is keeping service delivery local, I think it would see broad support.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would have raised virtual hand. But, under a minute.
Go for it.
Catherine Adam from Wallingford. I served as a school board member for 20 years and recently came out of retirement, so to speak, to join the Friends of Vermont Public Education. I will echo, I think it was Dan MacArthur, that I would be glad to serve on any committee, that the steering committee, subcommittee that comes up. I have a lot of experience. I'd also
hope to be able to submit written comments? Will there be a provision?
Yes.
And also maybe get on an email list for future meetings, notifications of future meetings? And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you all for what you're doing.
Appreciate it. So you raised something that I was just going to acknowledge. For those of you that maybe had something that you were hoping to say but didn't have a chance, please feel free to submit a comment in writing. You can submit that to me as the chair, and I will make sure it's in the record. We'll also take a look at the chat because there are quite a few comments and questions in there. I would also just offer that as the commission figures out how it will do its engagement, part of that engagement is just sort of the communicating out more regularly. Are there some questions that can find their way into a frequently asked questions place on the website that could be updated so that we can push out information? So I don't have answers to it right now, but absolutely that is part of our work. And I would just reiterate, I recognize keenly that this, while representative by organization, is not at all representative of Vermont as a whole. And that means that it is even more important for us as a commission to figure out how we will lift those voices and bring them into the room. So we know that's part of our work. And with that, I think I saw one comment about length of meeting. I would imagine this will be the shortest meeting that we will have as a commission. But with that, I will try to keep to what folks came here for. We will adjourn at 10:39. Commission members, you can expect to hear from us pretty quickly, but we will be pulling the steering committee group first and then scheduling meetings for the full commission shortly after that. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, we had to do the background knowledge today. That was the way I had it. I'm so sure.
Absolutely.
I'd love to see you get this.